All right. Hey, y'all. Hey. What's up out there to all of my fellow gold diggers? This is your girl, Rita, also known as the self proclaimed gold digger. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I am so glad to have you. But if you are a fellow gold digger, welcome back. Y'all know I love and I appreciate each and every one of you. And it is time for Tipsy Tuesday. Tonight is our election edition, y'all. So we're going to be making sure that you are voter ready because the election is only 41 days away. Okay. I don't know if you can believe it or not, but yeah, time is winding up. So we want to make sure you have everything you need so that you can vote and be an informed voter. Okay. Now, before I get into tonight's topic, let me do my social media checks really quickly and make sure everything is good. Okay, I am good there. And then let me check in one other spot. And then once I do that, we're going to get into what we need to talk about for tonight. Okay, we are good there as well. Okay. All right. So as always, thank you so much to all the new subscribers, to everyone who is joining me, everyone who has shown me love. I really and truly appreciate it. If my information has been helpful to you, that is my main goal. But also make sure that you like. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and share the content with a friend. Okay. And if this is your first time tuning in to Tipsy Tuesdays, let me tell you what we do. So on Tuesday nights, we take some sips, and y'all, I'm just sipping on water tonight. We take some sips as I share some tips. And tonight we're going to be talking about all things regarding, well, not all things, but making sure you are prepared for the election. Okay. And y'all know I like to have a little theme song. So we do have a Tipsy Tuesday song. I always say, and I got a couple of church announcements too. That's what I gotta let y'all know about a few things. But once you hear the Tipsy Tuesday song, that is your official welcome and introduction to Tipsy Tuesday. All right, so here we go. Tipsy Tuesday. Tipsy Tuesday. Tipsy Tuesday. Get your tips and pass the dues. Say Tipsy Tuesday. All right, you are officially welcomed in. All right, church announcements. I got a couple of church announcements. So your girl is going to be out of town next week. So I don't know if we're going to be doing a Tipsy Tuesday. I'm not going to be doing a live one. I know that for sure, because I don't know if I'm going to have good internet connection. So you may have a pre-recorded Tipsy Tuesday, but I don't know. I haven't decided. So there might not be a Tipsy Tuesday next week. So I'm sorry, guys. With me being out of town, I don't know. But I'm gonna try, depending on how this week goes, how these next few days go, I will see if I can get a recorded video up so that it will air on Tuesday. But I'm not making any promises. Okay. All right. So that was the big church announcement that I have for you. And other church announcement I had. So we're gonna be talking about elections, and my community is always great. Y'all are always wonderful. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. But anyone who's new, or make sure I don't want any sideways comments on tonight's video. Okay. Now, if you don't know, I'm going to let y'all know who I'm rocking with. If y'all don't already know already, I am definitely with her. I'm rocking with Kamala Harris. So, but whoever you vote for, that's on you. I just know who I'm voting for, okay? But tonight we're not going to be talking about why I'm voting for her or any of that. It's more so to make sure that you are prepared to vote and make an informed vote, and make sure that your vote is not being suppressed. So we want to make sure that your voice and your vote is heard. And by that, I want to make sure you have everything you need to be ready on, what is it, November 5th or whatever? Election day is, yeah, November 5th, for the election. Okay. So if you don't have a plan to vote, go ahead and make a plan. And hopefully this information that I'm going to be sharing on tonight will help you create a plan so that you can vote responsibly. And if there are any issues or any problems that might come up, you will know how to address them and know how to handle them. Okay. So that is the whole purpose of that, is not to slander any one candidate or hype up any one candidate, even though I might hype up Kamala Harris just a little bit, but it's more so to make sure that you are an informed voter when you go to the polls and you know your rights and know what to expect as a voter. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. So as I mentioned, the big election is going to be on Tuesday, November the 5th. And if you are not registered to vote, you still have time to register to vote, okay? So if you are over the age of 18 and you live in the US or a territory of the US, then make sure you are registered to vote. Anyone who's over 18 should be registered to vote. Voting is your right, so make sure you're exercising your right to vote. Now, each state has different deadlines for cutoffs for you to be able to register and be able to still participate in the upcoming, election. So please check your state. A lot of them, the cutoffs are like a month ahead, so you don't have a whole lot of time. So like it's already September 24th. So like for a lot of the states, next week might be the cutoff for when you can register to vote. Now, some states do have it where you can register all the way up until like the day before the election or the day of the election as well. So check your state, see what the criteria is for you to be able to register to vote. And I wanted to give you guys, there was a really helpful website that I had found. I want to say it is, vote411.org. That is a really helpful website with voting information on there. And you can also, it has state specific stuff. So you can click on your state, see when the deadline is if you are not registered to vote, and see how much time you have in order to get registered so that you can participate in the election. Do not sit this one out. Too much is hanging in the balance for you to sit this election out and not exercise your right to vote. Now, if you are already registered to vote, make sure your registration is still valid. Like I always say, before an election, check, make sure nothing's changed. Make sure your polling place has not changed where you need to go and vote. Make sure nothing has happened with that, because that is, I won't say part of voter suppression, but those are some tactics that some states have been using to suppress the vote by changing the polling place, the voting place where people can go and vote. So check your status of your voter registration status. Make sure it is still up to date. Make sure you still know where to go, where your polling place is, because you would hate to go to the wrong place and then have to either vote like I won't say a provisional ballot, or have to travel to another location depending on how much time you have. So look into this now. Make sure all your voter registration stuff is up to date and you know where you're going. Also, I forgot to mention, if you are not registered to vote, you may be able to register to vote online. So look into that as well. You can always do in person. You can always do in-person voting, and some states may even allow where you can mail in your vote. Okay. So they make it really simple. Some states make it really simple, or they should be making it really simple for you to get registered to vote. Okay. But the deadlines are quickly approaching. Okay. Like I said, we're only 41 days away from the election. So if you are not registered to vote, make sure you do so. Okay. As soon as possible. All right. Now, if you know you are registered to vote, you checked everything, then you may want to look into early voting as well. And same thing, this varies from state to state. But before we get into the early voting, I want to make sure y'all know the difference between early voting versus absentee voting. Okay. Absentee voting is when you know you are not going to be able to physically go in and vote, whether it's on election day or during the early voting period. And some people, I know now the information that I'm providing is more specifically, this particular absentee voting information is going to be more specifically for my state, which is for South Carolina. Okay, so you may request an absentee ballot if you are a college student who is going to be away from home. You can look into that if you're not going to be able to travel home and vote. I know when I was in college, I voted by absentee ballot and mailed it in. But the key thing with that too is check the dates. The dates are coming for like absentee ballots and stuff like that. Now, absentee means like you are not going to be there in person. And this, like I said, it's for college students. It's also for people who might have disabilities as well. And for South Carolina, it's also for anybody who's over age 65. So they, if you're an older individual, they don't require you to come in and vote, but you can do it by absentee ballot. Okay. Now, with absentee ballot, though, if you do it that way, you want to make sure you correctly fill out your ballot. Like, follow the instructions perfectly. Get someone to help you, not help you vote, but help you make sure that you filled it out correctly so that your absentee ballot will count. Okay. And follow the instructions when it comes to turning it in. So if you are someone who has a disability or older individual who cannot physically turn it in, because some of these states, they may not allow you to mail in your absentee ballot. Like, someone will still have to physically turn it in. I know for South Carolina, there's like a certain form you have to fill out with the absentee ballot to let them know that someone else is turning in your absentee ballot. So make sure you fill that out correctly as well so that your vote can count. Okay. Read the instructions 2-3 times, have someone else read it as well to make sure you fill it out correctly. And there are ways for you to track your absentee ballot. Now, like I said, deadlines are approaching really, really quickly. So you have to request an absentee ballot. And some states require a reason for absentee ballot. Like my state, South Carolina, they do require reasons. But some of those reasons, like I said, could be like you're a college student, you're disabled, you're not going to be able to physically be there during the time of voting, maybe because you're out of the country or out of the state or whatever. You can request the absentee ballot, but check those dates for when you can request it, as well as for when they need to be turned in. Like for South Carolina, the absentee ballot is due by 5 p.m. on Friday, October the 25th. So the absentee ballots usually are due before the actual election. Okay. So if you're thinking about doing an absentee ballot, the deadline for that is even earlier I know for South Carolina, but check your state, than the actual election day. So that's absentee. Like, you are not physically going to be able to come in and vote. Now, the difference between absentee ballot and early voting is that some states will allow, or I think most states, I don't know, some states will allow for you to come in prior to the election and go to like a polling place. And it doesn't always have to be like your designated polling place, because they sometimes will not have all of the polling places open. They will have only certain polling places open during the early voting time. And early voting can be any period, depending on how they've designated, where you can come in and vote before the election. Okay, so early voting, you're coming in person, but you are actually voting before the November 5th election day and casting your vote. And let me see if I have the dates well, I know South Carolina, it starts, I don't know, it starts, I want to say a couple of weeks into October. Like it hasn't started now. Some states might have already started early voting, or early voting will soon be starting. So just look at your state to see when does early voting actually start. Okay. Yes. So for South Carolina, it starts on Monday, October 21st, and it ends right before the actual election day on Saturday, November 2nd. Okay. Now there is a vote early day. There's like a national vote early day where they are highlighting people voting early. And so if you want to participate and take part in that day, because they're kind of keeping track of how many people are voting early on that specific day, that is going to be Tuesday, October the 29th. Okay. That is the vote early day. And next week is actually going to be National Voter Education Week, October, well, not next week, but the following week is October 7th through 11th. And that week is designed to educate you and make sure that you are actually ready to vote, kind of like what we are doing today, to make sure you have all of the information. But yes, so you may be able to vote absentee if you know you don't really want to be out there on election day because things are going to be, kind of hectic, chaotic, and stuff like that. You possibly can do absentee votes or you can do early voting, but check with your state to see which one you may qualify for. Most people are going to qualify for early voting. Everybody may not qualify for absentee voting based on your state. And the thing with absentee voting is you still need to make sure your absentee ballot gets in on time. Early voting, you're actually going in person and still voting early. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Let me check. Let me see. Let me see how we're doing. Let me make sure I don't have any comments. Y'all let me know. All right, no comments. Y'all let me know if all of this is making sense to you, okay? All right, so that was absentee voting versus early voting for election day. So, y'all, before y'all go to the polls, make sure y'all know who you're voting for. Y'all already know who I'm voting for president, okay? But make sure you know who you're voting for both on the national level as well as on the local level, okay? And when you go to check your voter registration status to make sure, hey, I am registered to vote, oftentimes, I know my state offers it, the state of South Carolina, they allow you to get a sample ballot. So I actually have my sample ballot here, and it is really, really helpful so you can see what all you are voting for, and for you to be able to research the candidates that are on the ballot, as well as any questions and stuff that they may be asking. So I printed out my sample ballot. I printed out my sample ballot. Y'all, I was surprised to see. So we all know the two main candidates for president, Trump and Harris, are the two main ones for president. But y'all, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are a total of 7. There are a total of 7 candidates running for president that I didn't even hear about. And these parties that I don't really know about or had heard about. Okay. Some of them I have heard about, but most of them not. Like there's the Constitution Party, United Citizens, Green Party. I have heard about that. Republican, of course, Libertarian. I've heard about that. Democratic and the Workers Party. Okay. So all these different parties. So check your ballot, see what's on there. So you can research these candidates and know who you're voting for, especially on the local level, because locally that is going to have more of an impact on you than on the national level. So you need to know who your city officials are, who your county officials are, and be actively involved in the process, even at the local level. And that's why it's also important to make sure you don't just vote during the presidential elections, but you vote for the smaller elections that are run throughout your state, throughout your county, to make sure that your voice is heard. And the other reason why, y'all, I thought this was going to be like a really simple ballot. The ballot is like 8 pages long. And then there is a question on here. This question is basically about how they're trying to allocate some money for that we would get from like sales tax. But this question is like 3 pages long. 3 pages long, and you're supposed to vote and say yes or no. So get a sample ballot, see what's on there, see what other people you might be voting for, as well as see what other questions they are asking you on the ballot. So you're not reading through, like, who wants to be sitting at the voting booth reading a question that is like 3 pages long. So get informed, inform yourself about what is on your ballot, so that you can make sure that you are making the best decision possible when you are casting your vote. And that's why I cannot emphasize enough: do your research, become an informed voter, know who you're voting for, know the policies they have, where they stand, what they are in alignment with, what you can, come into agreement with, or whatever. And I will say this: no candidate is probably going to check all your boxes. All right. No one is going to be the perfect candidate for you, but you have to make sure they're at least meeting most of your criteria and the things that you want to see in your community, in your state, and on the national level. So do your research, find out about your candidates, so that you can make an informed vote. Okay. All right. So get a sample ballot so that you will know what's on there. All right. We already talked about knowing your location. If you find out that you are in a new location, you may want to visit the actual new location. Make sure you're familiar with where you need to go and all that kind of stuff. On election day, be in line by 7 p.m. Now, if you are still in line after 7 p.m., stay in line. Don't get out of line, because as long as you're in line, you can cast your votes. Now, another important thing for you to prepare for election day is know what you need to bring. By that, what I mean by that is know what forms of ID you need to showcase in order to be able to vote. Now, some states do not require you to have ID, but I believe a majority of the states do require you to have ID. So it's going to vary from state to state, but know what type of ID is acceptable. Like, for instance, I know for like South Carolina, it could be like it has to be like your driver's license, a South Carolina ID card, passport, military ID, that kind of thing. But for Georgia, you can do all of those things, but you can also have like a county job ID as well. So it's going to vary from state to state, but just know what type of ID qualifies and that you can bring. Okay. Even if your state doesn't require you to bring ID, I would still highly recommend for you to bring ID in, or when you go to vote, so that there are no issues or anything like that. Now, if you do not have, I know for South Carolina, it requires a photo ID, and I don't know if that is required for most states, or the states that do require ID. But if your state does require a photo ID and you do not have it, see what ways you can go about and get a photo ID. You still have time, like I said, 41 days away. So you still have time to try and go out and get a photo ID. But first, you need to make sure, one, does your state require you to have an ID or a photo ID? Know what kind of ID is required. If a photo ID is required, make sure you have the appropriate photo ID that your state requires. And if you don't have that proper identification, then see what steps you need to take to be able to get it. I know for South Carolina, you can be issued a voter ID card the same day of the election. Okay. So I won't say there should not be an excuse. If you make a plan, if you plan ahead so you'll know what steps you need to take to make sure that your vote is cast, then and your voice is heard, then you should be able to do so. Okay. But we have to be proactive and make sure we are doing the necessary things to make sure that we are informed voters and we know our voters' rights. Okay. Now, even though South Carolina does require a photo ID, you can still vote even if you don't have a photo ID. They can give you a provisional ballot. So if for some reason you went through, your state requires ID, and you went through, or you attempted to go through the necessary measures to get the photo ID, and you were not able to obtain it, see if your state has other ways that you can still vote. Okay, don't give up. Just see what other ways can I possibly vote. Okay. Now the caveat though, like for my state, even if you do have, or if you forgot your ID and you voted by a provisional ballot, you do still have to show your ID prior to the election being, the votes being like certified. And the votes are usually, for my state, the votes are certified on Friday. So if you forgot your ID, lost your ID, something like that happened, you don't have your ID, you can, in South Carolina, you can still vote through provisional ballot. But in order for that ballot to count, you have to show your ID, for it to count towards the election for the certified results. Okay. But the moral of the story is, even if you don't have ID and your state requires it, see, is there some other way that I can vote to get you a little bit more time or whatever, in order to make sure that your voice is heard. Now, sometimes when it comes to voting, you just have to be persistent, and not give up to make sure, hey, I'm going to make sure my voice is heard. All right. Now, if you run into any issues when you're voting, so most polls or most voting places, they're going to have some type of poll manager or someone on site who is going to be able to assist you. So if you have any issues, ask for a poll manager or someone in charge to say, hey, this is what happened to me. Or if you feel like you had voter suppression or something like that, there are hotlines that you can call. There are places where you can file complaints and reach out to make sure your concern or your issue has been heard. And one of them, the election protection hotline, is actually 866 our votes. Okay. So that's 866 our vote, and that is the election protection hotline. Okay, let's see. All right. There are no comments, but I am going to put the election protection hotline in the comment section so y'all can see it and know. So let me put that in real quick. The actual number. So y'all can have that. All right, let me make sure I put it in right. Yes. Okay. So that is what is in there. And I cannot emphasize enough, you need to know your rights. Know your rights when it comes to voting. And for certain, and this is what I found out too, as I was doing the research for tonight's topic and trying to find out more information. There are certain individuals where you might think that you cannot vote, but you actually can vote. So if you are someone who is unhoused, you have no permanent place of residence, you're without a home, you can still vote. Check your state, because each state is different. Check your state and see how you may possibly be able to vote. If you are a person who is unhoused and does not have a permanent place of residence, okay, you can still cast your vote. All right. So don't let that be a deterrent to you. Now, also, if you've been convicted of a felony, you could possibly still vote. Once again, this is state dependent. And there was some information. Let me see. I'm looking for the information now where it had the different states. Let me see if I can find it. It had it listed what states. Here it is. Okay. So if you have been convicted of a felony In the following states, it says your right to vote is not affected, and this is from vote.gov. This is where I'm getting this information from. So vote.gov. So it says your right to vote is not affected by a criminal conviction in these states and territories. So if you live in Maine, Vermont, DC, or Puerto Rico, even if you've been convicted of a felony, it does not affect your right to vote. So you can still vote. So don't count yourself out if you are in any of these places. Now, another criteria is you are eligible to vote immediately after you have been released from prison in these states. And I'm going to quickly read them out because there's a bunch here. And that is California, Colorado, Connecticut, Guam, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, New Mexico, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Utah, and Washington. So in those states that I just listed out, you are eligible to vote immediately after you've been released from prison in these places, okay? And then another criteria is you are eligible to vote after you fully completed any parole or probation in these states and territories. And it's not as many of these. So if you are in any of these states or territories, which are Alaska, American Samoa, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, North Carolina, Northern Mariana Islands, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, U.S. Virgin Islands, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Even if you were convicted of felony, you are eligible to vote after you've completed any parole or probation, okay, in those places. And I think the rest of the states, any states that I did not mention, because I'm not going to call these out, but it just says you may or may not be eligible to vote after you fully completed your sentence in these states. So any states that I have not mentioned, it's probably more nuanced, and you need to check the specific states. One of them, I will say, is just because I'm right on the border, is Georgia. All right, so don't let certain situations, circumstances that you've been through count you out from voting. Know your rights and be an informed voter so that you can cast your ballot, okay? Now, if for some reason, I know in my state we have voting machines, but if you are in a state where they do have paper ballots and you make a mistake on your ballot, then you should request a new one, okay? And then also, if you're at your polling place or your voting place and the machine is not working or the machines are down, make sure that you request an actual paper ballot. Like, don't leave just because the machines are down. You can still vote by a paper ballot, okay? So that was the main gist of what I wanted to talk about today, your voting rights. And then y'all are kind of quiet today. I have a few final tips for y'all for voting day for y'all to keep in mind, and so that y'all can be prepared when you go to the polls, okay? So really quickly, some final tips. Make sure before you go to the polls, go ahead and do this a week before or at least a few days before. Save important numbers in your phone regarding election issues. And I have it posted, the Election Protection Hotline, 866 Our Vote. Go ahead, put it in your phone, save it in there, because if there are any issues going on at your polling place, if you feel like there is voter suppression going on, then you need to call this number and go ahead and make a complaint or see what needs to be done to address the issue, okay? So save the numbers. Even you probably want to look up the numbers for your specific state, who you might need to reach out to as well, and save those numbers in your phone so you can easily access it, because you don't want to be looking up this stuff in the spur of the moment when stuff is going on. You want to already have it saved into your phone so you can easily dial and say, hey, I'm dialing the Election Protection Hotline because I feel like voter suppression is going on, or I feel like my voter rights are being withheld or whatever. So you want to be able to easily just go ahead and do that. So save those numbers in your phone. If you are planning on voting on actual election day or even before, make sure you come with a lot of patience. The reason why I say that, definitely on election day, the lines might be long. So come with patience. Don't be in a hurry or anything like that. Um, just bring a lot of patience. Even if you do early voting, you never know how things are going to turn out. Or if you're trying to get an absentee ballot or something like that, just come with patience. There might be some, extra steps that you might have to take. There might be some red tape going on or whatever. Whatever it is, just come with extra patience, especially if you plan on voting on election day, okay? And with me mentioning about the long lines, just know, hey, it's quite possible that it is going to be a long line. Hopefully, we will have a record turnout at the elections. This November. Hopefully, it will, break the record books and we have a huge turnout. And I'm a big advocate for making sure your voice is heard. Okay. Um, do not sit this one out. I know y'all keep hearing about, hey, don't sit this one out, it's too important and everything like that, but it really, really is. So make sure you have your plan for how you are going to vote this November. But be prepared for long lines. Also, make sure you bring your ID. Okay. Um, like I said, most states require it. Even if your state does not require it, I would still recommend for you to bring an ID just in case. I don't know, something might happen or whatever. Just bring ID when you go to vote. The other thing I would say too, since you might be in a long line, make sure you dress comfortably as well as appropriately for the weather. So I know we're all in different parts of the country. Some places might be cold or cooler. Other places might be hot. We might, it might be raining that day, whatever. Make sure when you go out there, because you might be out there for a while waiting, make sure you are dressed comfortably and make sure you are dressed appropriately for the weather. Like I said, most of the time, the polling places are inside, but I know there were, I don't know if it was the last election, it might have been the last big election. The line was wrapped all the way outside. Okay. So if that might be the case this time. Like, so before I could even get inside the building, we were waiting outside for, 15 minutes or so, before we could get in. So you just want to make sure you are dressed appropriately for whatever the season is, as well as for whatever the weather is, because, you don't want to get all aggravated and upset because now you're freezing because you had to wait outside or whatever, or now you're wet because it's raining. So, check the weather, dress appropriately, and I cannot emphasize enough, come with patience. Okay. The other thing you want to make sure you do, which all of us are probably going to do, is make sure you bring your phone. Okay, bring your phone, but make sure it is fully charged. And that's because you don't know how long you might be out there. You don't know if something might arise or might come up where you might have to actually call the election protection hotline. So you're always going to have your phone, but make sure your phone is fully charged so that if anything happens, you can be able to reach out to the necessary people, make the necessary phone calls, and get the situation taken care of. Okay. The other thing you might want to consider is bringing snacks, water, and medication. So snacks and water, especially if the lines are going to be long, as well as you might want to bring some, well, I don't know. I know some states are saying you can't bring like snack. I don't know. I forget. I heard it like you can't bring snacks and water for other people, but you just never know. It might be elderly people out there who might need some water, especially if it's hot outside, or a snack, especially if, their blood sugar or something drops too low, especially if you have been in line for a long time. So just come with snacks, come with water, come with your medications, especially if you're supposed to take medication at a certain time or something. You want to make sure you have that, because if you're in line for an hour and you thought you were going to be able, to go in and get out or whatever, and you need to take your medication, you want to make sure you have that handy with you, as well as just have some like basic medicine. Like I know I always have some kind of pain medicine usually in my purse. So in case if you're waiting outside, it's hot, you're in the heat, the sun, you get a headache or whatever, you have something to kind of help ease that out. Okay. So just be prepared. You don't know what is going to happen, but you want to make sure you have these safety nets in place where you can make your voting process as smooth as possible, as easy as possible, with as little aggravation as possible. Because these little things, these little nuisances can easily aggravate you and possibly discourage you from wanting to vote. Because if you're like, oh my God, my head is killing me, I still got to stand in this line for another 20, 30 minutes or something like that, you may be tempted to leave and not vote. So this is all about being prepared, getting prepared for the big day if you are planning on voting on election day. And that's why also you may want to consider early voting, so you might not have to be subjected to the potential long lines that are sure to be on the actual election day on November 5th. Okay. So bring snacks, bring water, bring your medication. And last but not least, I have to say, you have to make sure you vote. Okay. So don't do all of this stuff and get out of line and get discouraged. Make sure you go there and you vote, and not just getting discouraged and getting out of line, or someone saying, hey, the machines are down or something happens. Still make sure you vote. Know the steps that you can take to be able to vote, whether that's requesting a paper ballot, whether that's requesting like a provisional ballot. Know what you can do if they say, hey, this is what happened. How can I still cast my vote? And that's why you want to have those phone numbers on hand so that you can be able to easily reach out to people who are even more informed, or reach out to a polling manager who is on site to see, hey, what steps can I take, because I plan on voting today and I'm not leaving until I vote. Okay, so those were your tips for having a successful voter day, election day. So I hope everyone goes to the polls. I hope everyone exercises their right to vote. Don't sit this one out. Check your status, make sure you're registered, make sure you know your candidates, get your sample ballot so you know who's on the ballot, so you can make and not just know who's on the ballot, but know what questions are being asked of you as well on the local level too, if you're having to make decisions, if your county, city, that kind of thing is voting on things that can affect you as well. So get a sample ballot, so you can know what to expect when you go to vote on November 5th. All right. I hope this has been helpful to you. Y'all go out there, exercise your right to vote. I will be doing so on November 5th. Like I said, y'all know who I'm voting for. My girl, Kamala Harris. So, but whoever you're voting for, hopefully, whoever you're voting for, just make sure that you actually do go and vote. All right. So we are actually going to be wrapping up early since that was it. And I don't see any comments. So just remember, there will not be a live Tipsy Tuesday next week. I might have something pre-recorded, but until then, I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your week. Take care, guys.